Let me take you back to the year 2012. Nintendo was mere months away from launching a new, mysterious successor to the Wii, which they modeled after the most popular video game console of all time, the Leapfrog LeapPad. The world was about to end as predicted by the ancient Mayans because the calendars were going to run out of pages. And From Software was porting Dark Souls 1 to PC, basing its netcode on the obvious industry leader of PC gaming, games for Windows Live. Yeah, we're not talking about Dark Souls Remastered today. I already covered that one back in 2020. Like I said, it's 2012, and we're talking about the 720p, 30 FPS original PS3, Xbox 360, and PC releases. Given this game's age, you might be expecting me to shatter it to pieces, and while it does have some fairly game-breaking exploits of its own, because it lacks the use quantity menu added in Remastered, we can't instantly dupe unlimited souls like we can in that version. In order to break this game, we're going to have to use unique glitches you've likely never seen before. Grab your Estus Flask and a copy of DS Fix. It's time to break Dark Souls. Prepare to Die Edition. This video is sponsored by boot.dev, what is possibly the best online resource for learning how to program anywhere on the internet. It's not an online course in a traditional sense, it's more of a game, and by completing programming quests you unlock gear and XP to level up your account and advance on the competitive leaderboard. I'm not kidding, this class is a full RPG. It's self-paced, so play whenever you want to play, there's no pressure, but you'll be shocked at the amount of real-world skill you pick up when you do. Boot.dev teaches both the Python and Go programming languages, and I bet if you know absolutely nothing about programming, you still recognize the name Python. That's because that language has absolutely exploded in popularity in recent years, being used for developing mobile apps, PC programs, server-side stuff, and yes, even video games. So, if you're ready to put your RPG skills to work in your real life, click the link in the description and use my code Phobia to get 25% off your first payment for boot.dev. That's 25% your first month, or 25% your first year, whichever you prefer. And finally, thanks to boot.dev for helping to fund the production of this video. Okay, first things first. What starting class do we choose? This playthrough is going to require sorcery, pyromancy, miracles, and a bow, so almost all those starting classes provide an advantage of some kind. Plus, the thief always starts with a master key even if you choose a different starting gift, so that's a great choice too. In order to create a guide that caters to as many people as possible, I'll be starting as the deprived class, which starts with nothing, but you should choose whichever your personal preference is. It's also worth noting that I'll be taking black fire bombs as my starting gift in order to show off a glitch in the Undead Asylum, which is fine because we shouldn't need the master key for this playthrough anyway. We wake up in the Asylum when Oscar shows up and drops a literal decaying corpse into the room with us because it has the key to our cell door. Ew, okay. We make a break for it, light our first bonfire, and open the doors ahead into the boss room of the Asylum Demon. As you know, the player isn't meant to defeat it at this point, but using the black firebombs we chose as our starting gift, we can do exactly that with relative ease. The moment its HP hits 0, we pause the game, quit out, and reload to find ourselves back outside the boss room, and the Asylum Demon back to life. Next we proceed as if nothing unusual happened, escaping through the door on the left, heading down the crumbling alleyway to pick up our starting weapon, and then dodging the rolling boulder trap which breaks the hole in the wall, leading to Oscar. Because we technically defeated the Asylum Demon once already, it gives the key that it normally drops to Oscar, and he returns it to us at the same time he gives us the Estus Flask. Now we continue through the Asylum as normal, drop down into the room with the demon from the top, but since we already have the key, we can open the door and leave while it's attacking us. This glitch is called Asylum Demon Skip, and although we technically did defeat it once already, because the process of the glitch brings it back to life, it isn't included in the final boss counts for challenge runs. There's no real advantage to doing this unless you're going for minimum bosses, but it's always neat to pull off something in Dark Souls I've never done before. With that, we have the Giant Crow take us to Firelink Shrine, and we can begin the process of setting up our build. I quickly grab the souls and consumable items lying around the starting area, including the free Firekeeper soul and New Londo, so that we start out with an Estus Flask +1. Then as a reminder, because we don't have the master key, we have no choice but to take the stairs up to Undead Burg. Upon entering the town, we dodge the Hellkite Drake, then immediately take a right and head for the Undead Merchant. From him we buy the Bottomless Box, a Rapier, and a Short Bow. All of them we will need for later glitches. and finally kill him for the residence key and a free humanity. Next we proceed deeper through Undead Burg as usual, use the residence key to open the locked door and open the chest for some gold pine resin, then jump over the flaming barrel trap and head up the spiral stairs to reach the Taurus demon. Our best weapon right now absolutely sucks, and when we could probably beat Taurus fairly easily with gold pine resin, we can save a consumable by having him jump to his own death instead. Granted, this is complete RNG, but when you're standing directly underneath Taurus, he will either do an overhead slam attack, a long sweep attack, or jump directly backwards to create some distance. Get lucky with that third move as his back is facing the break in the stone bridge, and it's bye-bye Taurus demon. Next we make it to the bridge and narrowly dodge Dragonfire from the Hellkite Drake in order to take the stairs down and kick the shortcut ladder to our previous bonfire. Next we equip the gold pine resin, take the ladder back up, and proceed to the left of the bridge where it's safe from the Dragonfire, and just wait. I don't think this is nearly as well known as it should be, but you don't have to shoot the Hellkite Drake with an arrow in order to get him to drop down. If you stand still in the spot, he will eventually realize he will only be able to hit you with melee and jump down on his own, giving us the perfect opportunity to rush in and cut the tail for the Drake Sword. Unironically, this is going to be our best weapon for some time, so this is definitely one not to skip. Now that we made it to the Sunlight Altar, it's time to have a conversation about humanity. Whenever you defeat enemies in an area with a boss that's still alive, enemies have a low chance of dropping a point of humanity along with their souls, which goes directly into your counter in the upper left of the screen. This is colloquially known as soft humanity, but it's no different than what you get by opening your menu and manually popping a hard humanity. Either way, you get more points in your counter, and for every point you hold, your character gains additional defenses through 99 and item discovery through 10. This means that by popping humanities until we have a 10 in our counter, we can set our item discovery to 210, the maximum possible at this stage in the game. As you might expect, the higher your item discovery, the higher the chance of enemies dropping rare items, and if we pull the lever just ahead and take the spiral stairs up, we can farm the Black Knight here for his sword. The Black Knight does not respawn, so you'll have to back up your save data and restore if it doesn't drop, but thanks to the 10 humanity in our counter, we got it on the first try. The Black Knight Ultra Greatsword is one of the strongest weapons in the game, but requiring a staggering 30 strength, it's one we won't be using for quite a while. Pocketing the sword for now, we continue straight ahead past the Undead Knights and the Fang Boar to pass under the gate before it closes and reach Undead Parish. Just inside the church, we parry the Knight of Berenique for an easy kill with the Drake Sword, and pick up another free Firekeeper soul. Finally, it's time to go meet Andre. He can't power up the Drake Sword just yet, but we can buy 999 wooden arrows from him, another required item for a later glitch. With all that out of the way, surprise surprise, we're doing Sin Skip. This has got to be the most well-known glitch in all of Dark Souls 1 at this point, and yes, it works in all versions of the game, remastered or otherwise. I know you guys know how this works, but I'll run through it quickly just in case. First, you lure an enemy onto the stairs between Andre and the church, parry an attack, and riposte while standing to the side. During the follow-up animation, the character's model clips inside the stairs just a bit, and the kill plane is so close to the opposite side of the stairs that with the right positioning, we can trick the game into thinking the character is falling out of bounds, triggering the top-down camera. With the camera locked into this position, new areas stop loading, and we can use that fact to our advantage. We make our way through the Undead Gate to Sin's Fortress, and equip and reload or respawn our character with proper control of the camera, but on the opposite side of the closed gate, skipping the need to ring the 2 bells of awakening. It's also worth noting that since the gate here is double-sided, the only way to leave the fortress at this point is to die and respawn at a bonfire outside of it, so make sure you're prepared for that going in. We sprint through Sins here, using traps to defeat enemies whenever possible since the damage output of the Drake Sword is already beginning to show its age, and make it to the section with rolling boulders, and drop down the path halfway in order to pick up my favorite armor set in the game, and quite literally the first clothing this undead has ever owned. From here we continue onward and out the top of the fortress, resting at the bonfire here. This sets our respawn location to Sin's Fortress, meaning we are officially soft-locked here until we obtain the Lord Vessel and can warp ourselves out. With that being the case, let's waste no time and defeat the Iron Golem as soon as possible. Thankfully, he's a very easy boss, so even the Drake Sword should be more than enough to...
Brother,
Okay, well... At least we have some, like, firebombs left over from the Asylum. Surely those will deal enough damage to...
What's that? What's that, brother?
Like I said, we are soft-locked in Sin's Fortress now with no good weapons, and the Drake Sword doesn't even have scaling, so leveling up strength or dexterity won't help either. Thankfully, This is an opportunity to show off one of the glitches that was patched in Dark Souls Remastered, but still works in Prepare to Die Edition. Something that can give us the damage boost we need to make this boss possible. As you know, only weapons in the right hand can be two-handed, except for one distinct exception: a bow. Because a bow can be equipped in the left hand like any other weapon, but only functions when used with both hands, your character will automatically two-hand the bow if you press L1 to attack with it. This, as you might imagine, is exploitable. First, sort your inventory so that the short bow we bought from the Undead merchant is at the very top, and the Drake sword is just underneath it in the pause menu. Next, equip the rapier we bought from the Undead merchant in the right hand, the short bow in the left hand, and then extremely quickly, we'll have to jump, tap L1 just as the character's feet hit the ground, then immediately press start to open the menu, move over to the right one to open the equipment screen, move down to the bow and replace it with the Drake sword, all before the character recovers from the roll. Do all this correctly and the queued bow attack will force the weapon in the left hand to be two-handed, which, since this wasn't intended by normal mechanics, does not have a complete animation table. The timing for this is extremely tight, because the menu in Dark Souls lags behind and will drop inputs if you press them too quickly. So you have to be fast enough to issue everything before the roll completes, but not so fast that the menu drops your inputs. I actually thought for a long time that this glitch was patched on the latest version of Prepare to Die Edition, but I eventually got it, proving that it does still work, it's just tricky to learn the timing. If you're still failing it, chances are you're pressing L1 too soon. Remember, if you don't wait until your character's feet hit the ground and the roll is initiated, two-handing the bow won't be queued in the first place. This glitch is known as a Moveswap because without associated animations programmed for a two-handed running attack from the left hand, if we perform one in this state, it will apply the running attack animation of the weapon in our right hand to the one in our left. If you weren't aware, the running attack on the rapier is the best attack in its class because it hits twice, and since we just applied that to the Drake sword, we just doubled our damage output. Now if we challenge the Iron Golem once more, we'll find that spamming running attacks not only allows us to deal twice the damage as before in the same amount of time, it also allows us to deal twice the poise damage as before, resulting in the boss beginning to stagger far sooner than he should against this weapon. We keep up the pressure a little longer, and off he goes. So far, we're 2 for 2 on bosses dying to gravity. We obtain the Iron Golem soul, and can finally reach Anor Londo. From here, we proceed down the stairs as usual, and light the bonfire tended by the Dark Moon Nidus, and with the Iron Golem soul, this playthrough just got infinitely easier. I know I said at the beginning of the video that because Prepare to Die Edition doesn't have the use quantity option, we can't duplicate souls in the same way, and that's true, but Prepare to Die Edition has its own soul duplication glitch that still works on current patch, and is actually the same exploit as the Moveswap. To start, equip the Iron Golem soul in the hotbar so that it's usable as square. Note that this only works because boss souls have a yes-no prompt appear when used, even from the hotbar. This dupe glitch only works with boss souls for that reason, and the bigger the value, the better. First, begin a sprint and jump. Just like with the Moveswap, you want to cue the action by pressing square after your character's feet hit the ground and a roll initiates, then quickly press start, open the item menu, and use the Estus Flask from the menu. If you did it correctly, the yes-no prompt for the Iron Golem soul will appear, but when you use it, the quantity will be consumed from the Estus Flask, not the soul, meaning you can repeat it over and over indefinitely. Because we have fewer menus to navigate through, this glitch also has a much more generous window than the Moveswap does. I'd say this is one of the easiest and most repeatable glitches in Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition. It's a good thing too, because we need to do it a lot. We continue duping the soul until we have enough to level strength up to 40, endurance to 40, attunement to 12, and put all the rest into vitality just so that we have nice looking bars on the HUD. This means we now have the requirements to wield the Black Knight Ultra Greatsword, and that combined with the Moveswap glitch from earlier is going to give us a crazy damage output, even with the weapon unupgraded. But don't worry, we're taking care of that next. We proceed down the Anor Londo elevator and defeat the gargoyle easily by using Moveswap running attacks with the Black Knight Ultra Greatsword, and do the same thing to the painting guardians in the next room to make it across the high rafters and eventually to the top of the spiral elevator, which we can lower to complete the bridge and proceed deeper into the city. Remember, our sword is still unupgraded at this point, but it's already enough to one-shot the giants that stand in our way, which may be a hint at how powerful we're going to become by the end of this playthrough. We take the path up the ramp with the Silver Knight archers and clear them out just as easily to make it inside the building and light the bonfire found here. Next we go up the spiral stairs and jump at the railing that descends down below to bounce over it, serving as a minor skip that prevents us from having to clear out all the enemies here normally. From here we take the path forward and climb the stairs to the left to go up and around, ultimately leading to the room with the giant blacksmith. As you probably know, the giant blacksmith sells Twinkling Titanite, meaning we can buy everything we need to fully upgrade our sword right now, which is one of the primary reasons I chose this weapon for this run. We could dupe the Iron Golem soul over and over until we can afford how many we'd need, but how about I show you a faster way? If you use a Homeward Bone, a yes-no prompt will appear just like when you use boss souls. But interestingly, if while two-handing your weapon, you equip the Homeward Bone in your hotbar, roll, press square to cue the bone during the roll, and press start, you can delay this prompt appearing. Now you can close the menu, and for some reason the prompt will not appear until your character stops walking. Meaning, we have an exploit on our hands. First two-hand your weapon, then pause the game and find the 999 wooden arrows we bought from Andre. Select drop so that the quantity of 999 appears on the screen, then close the menu without dropping them. Next, perform a roll, cue the Homeward Bone from the hotbar and press start to open the menu. Begin walking, close the menu, and talk to the giant blacksmith to enter his buy menu, and do not stop walking until you see the items available for purchase. Now when the character stops, the yes-no prompt for the Homeward Bone should appear. Next, highlight the item you want to buy, and the word yes on the Homeward Bone prompt and confirm. Now immediately begin mashing circle to back out of everything, and cancel the Homeward Bone before it teleports you away. Only one prompt can be on screen at a time, and since the Homeward Bone yes-no prompt was already on screen, the game was unable to open another asking how many of the item we wanted to buy. Therefore, it defaulted to the last quantity we viewed, which thanks to the wooden arrows, was 999. This means that if we open our menu and check our Twinkling Titanite at this point, we just bought the maximum quantity that can be held, without having to pay the souls to do so. Now with one quick Iron Golem soul dupe for some spending money, we can fully upgrade our Black Knight Ultra Greatsword to +5. At this point, we're dealing nearly 600 physical damage per hit, and thanks to the Moveswap glitch, remember, we hit twice. Needless to say, going forward, no boss in the game is going to pose much of an issue. Back in the previous room, we clear out the giants and lure the Silver Knight Archer all the way to the Fog Gate of Ornstein and Smoke. I also talked about this glitch in my video covering Dark Souls Remastered, but it works in every version of Dark Souls, so I might as well talk about it again here. By luring an enemy as close to the Fog Gate as possible, for a boss that has a cutscene upon entering the fog which has not been triggered yet, you can parry, then riposte, and the follow-up animation will push your character backward a bit. This can potentially trigger the boss cutscene and begin the fight, while you stay outside the arena. From here, if you walk back to a bonfire and rest, the boss AI will be reset without resetting the fight as a whole, as evidenced by the fact that the boss health bars are still at the bottom of the screen. If you enter the fog normally at this point, the boss will be frozen and you can defeat it effortlessly. In the case of Ornstein and Smoke, you will be forced to take down Ornstein first in order to spawn Super Smoke, or the fight will be soft locked. Because this technically is a new enemy, it spawns in with working AI, but as I said before, our new sword is so powerful, it's hardly an issue. We take out Smoke, take the elevator up, and open the doors to Guinevere's chamber to finally claim the Lord Vessel. At this point, nothing is stopping us from warping straight to Firelink Shrine and talking to Frampt to place the Lord Vessel straight away. So we do just that to... Wait, what? Where's Frampt? So as it turns out, the trigger for opening the path to the kiln of the First Flame and triggering the appearance of Frampt is exclusively ringing the two bells of awakening. Picking up the Lord Vessel will not do it. So even though we've already beaten Sin's Fortress and already claimed the Lord Vessel from Anor Londo, we have no choice but to go back and kill both the gargoyles and Quelaag anyway, because the path to the kiln is still closed. With that unfortunately being the case, let's waste as little time as possible. We head back to Undead Parish to deal with the gargoyles, which unfortunately have to be fought in the intended way. We have two different means at our disposal to skip them in theory, but repeating Sin Skip won't work because the ladders do not function correctly while the camera is stuck in the top-down state, so we'd be unable to climb to the boss arena in the first place. And repeating the freeze glitch we use at Ornstein and Smoke by parrying and riposting a hollow also doesn't work because while the gargoyles do have a cutscene associated with them, the trigger for it is in the middle of the roof, not upon entering the fog gate. Believe it or not, to this day, even the any % world record speedrun of Dark Souls still has not found a way to skip fighting gargoyles, though I personally believe it's only a matter of time before they do. Given that we have no other option in this case, we enter the fight normally and use our insane damage output to take out the gargoyles in a matter of seconds, granting us access to the first Bell of Awakening. The second bell is, of course, past Quelaag and Blighttown, but that's easy enough to reach. All we have to do is take the elevator down to New Londo, and open the door to the Valley of Drakes with a master key, which we don't have. I really did not think ringing the 2 bells was going to be necessary, so I didn't plan for this. In case you aren't already aware, there are 3 ways to get the master key in Dark Souls: starting as a thief, selecting the master key as your starting gift, or buying it from Dom Hall of Zena after he moves to Firelink Shrine, after ringing both bells of awakening, which means that the master key would no longer be needed in the first place. That means we have no way of getting the item at this point, and can therefore not use the shortcut to Blighttown. The alternative is to go the long way through Lower Undead Burg, kill the Capra Demon, go through the depths, kill the Gaping Dragon, go all the way through Upper Blighttown, and finally through Blighttown itself to reach Quelaag's domain. And there is no way in hell I'm doing all that. But there may actually be a third way. Because we aren't playing in the remastered version of the game, we have access to a Prepare to Die edition exclusive glitch known as an area transition clip that we can use to go out of bounds. While I would love to just clip through this door and proceed through the Valley of Drakes as usual, it unfortunately doesn't work that way. The area transition clip is an extremely precise glitch and can only be done in a few fixed locations where the end of one area meets the beginning of another. The closest place we can area transition clip is the elevator between Firelink Shrine and New Londo Ruins, but is that even useful? What I need is someone who is an expert on out-of-bounds secrets in Dark Souls. Someone with developer tools to check for polygons and collision and see if there's a theoretical path for the skip to work in the first place. Someone equally as insane as I am. And I know just who to ask.
In order to examine this potential sequence break, we first need to take a look at the geometry surrounding the Firelink elevator, since that's where the out-of-bounds clip would begin. An area transition clip from here can place the player character out of bounds anywhere along the edge of the elevator shaft, but they will spawn immediately into a falling animation since there's nothing to stand on outside of the shaft. This fall will be lethal because the only thing we can land on is over 20 meters below, and there's no geometry to land on that even faces the Valley of Drakes. So reaching that area this way would be impossible and is already off the table. But apparently, we're not out of options yet. Assuming you have some way to survive the lethal fall, the only geometry with collision that allows you to keep exploring out of bounds down here is this small plus-shaped ridge where 2 walls meet that make up the outer bounds of New Londo Ruins. It's also worth noting that this is not a platform in a true sense. It's the top of 2 walls, which is something you can stand on, but you would be bouncing on a razor's edge after landing here. From the plus-shaped geometry, you could walk along the top of the wall away from the elevator shaft, and drop all the way down to this platform, which once again is another guaranteed lethal fall at just barely over 20 meters. But this would put you at the right height to begin walking along the top edge of the left wall of New Londo Ruins like a tightrope, all the way down to a point at which the collision stops, which is here, placing us well out above the waters of the flooded city. Why is this location important? Well, if we use a map viewer to see what's directly below this point, we find that we're right above Quelaag's domain, meaning that if you could get to the top of this wall in New Londo Ruins, you could theoretically drop down directly into the room just before Quelaag. But again, this is all assuming you have a way to survive 3 lethal falls, and to clip out of bounds in the first place, which I think you know where this is going, and I'll pass things off back to Phobia.
Clipping out of a moving elevator, seam walking on the razor-thin tops of walls, and surviving 3 lethal drops in a row? Is that all? Oh, this should be no problem. We're going to need some setup to make this possible, however, and the first step is to rescue Griggs from Lower Undead Burg. This is not a particularly late game area, so we could walk there normally, but we can perform a minor skip by making our way to this ladder in Undead Burg, and jump from the roof to land on this small protrusion in the wall, and then jump down again to go over the railing and land down on the street of Lower Undead Burg. This is one of the first sequence breaks ever discovered in Dark Souls, found by Japanese players all the way back in 2011, and I'm happy to report that since it's an exploit of the level geometry itself, it still works today, over a decade later. The door Griggs is stuck behind can be unlocked with a residence key, so it's as simple as opening the door and he will now appear back in Firelink Shrine. From here, we want to buy the sorcery Fall Control from him and equip it. Those of you that have seen my video on Dark Souls Remastered already know what I have planned next. The area transition clip out of the Firelink elevator is extremely precise, so you need to follow along with my steps exactly if you want it to work. To start off, enter the room via Firelink Shrine with the elevator at the top, and count 4 of the decorative columns in the wall starting from the lever and going counterclockwise. We want to pin our character in the corner of the 4th column. This next step is the most precise of all because it sets up the location we will spawn after the out of bounds clip. equip a bow, and press up on the D-pad to zoom in so that you can set your angle as precisely as possible. We want to find this tiny plus shape within the engraving of the elevator switch and position the crosshairs of the bow so that the upper left diagonal line is placed just within the upper left shoulder of the plus shape, which should look like this. When you've gotten it, attempt to shoot an arrow and roll forward before it's fired. This will delay the roll and ensure that you roll from the exact position without accidentally taking a step forward first. Elevators are considered to be unstable terrain, and the game will not update our location as long as we're on one. Once it reaches the bottom, find the doorway that leads out to New Londo and turn the camera 180 degrees so that we're facing the middle chain and walk into it, slightly moving to the right until our character stops moving. Finally, aim with the bow and place your crosshairs here, just underneath this small brown patch in the texture. Roll forward and immediately spam dodge with the analog stick in the neutral position to backstep as quickly as possible. As long as you manage to spend less than 5 frames within the bounds of New Londo ruins, the game will load New Londo first after a quit and reload, thinking it was your last area. But the position we set up at the top of the elevator will not have updated yet, because that only occurs on every 5th frame that you stand on stable ground. Assuming that you got the proper setups, which again are extremely precise, after a quit and reload, this will happen. As Illusory stated, this fall is lethal, so we have to quit out the moment we hit the out of bounds wall in order to avoid respawning in Firelink. Do all of that, and you will load back in here on the plus shaped out of bounds geometry where the 2 walls in New Londo meet. Next we need to survive another lethal fall, but this time quitting out just as we hit the ground won't work. We first need to cast Fall Control, which delays fall damage deaths by 10 frames while it's active. It doesn't make lethal falls survivable, but it does give us a tiny grace period to quit out of the game in time. We carefully roll over an invisible wall here and fall down into the out of bounds platform below, quitting out just as we hit the ground once more. Next, and what is perhaps the trickiest step, we have to seam walk along the top of the left wall of New Londo until the point where it no longer has collision. The camera is never in a good spot for this because the textures here are one-sided, so pan it too far to the left and you'll have no reference point for where your character is standing anymore. Thankfully, if you're fast enough on the draw, you can quit out and load back in after you fall to continue forward without resetting. Eventually, you will make it to the end of the wall's collision, which is easily noticeable by the giant diagonal line where the texture breaks. This is the spot we drop down from. So first we cast Fall Control, and remember how I said earlier that Fall Control gives us a 10 frame window to quit out of the game after hitting the ground? Yeah, about that. The name pop-up of entering a new area will forcibly close the pause menu, meaning this last step is by far the hardest part of the glitch. So, how many frames exactly do we have after hitting the ground and before the area text appears to perform the quit out? Oh, that's good. I tried this over and over and over, but eventually, I got it. Lower Undead Burg, Capra Demon, the Depths, Gaping Dragon, Upper Blighttown, and Blighttown itself all skipped in what is without a doubt the hardest glitch I have ever performed in the history of this channel. It's also worth noting that if you attempt this glitch with DS-Fix enabled and your game running at 60 FPS instead of 30, it's still possible, but you won't be able to clip through the roof of Quelaag's domain, spawning in instead on the outside of the tunnel, which is just about as useless as you might imagine. So if you're playing on PC and have DS-Fix installed, make sure to toggle it off with the backspace key first before trying the drop. Additionally, none of this glitch works on Dark Souls Remastered at all because the remaster loads areas too quickly for the area transition clip to be possible in the first place. This is a glitch that will forever define the 30 FPS Dark Souls 1 original release only. Now that we've successfully skipped into Quelaag's domain, it's time to skip Quelaag herself. Since she does have a cutscene trigger upon entering the fog gate, I thought it might be possible to freeze her by parrying an enemy just outside the fog gate, like we did with Ornstein and Smoke. The issue is, I only know of one parryable enemy in all of Blighttown. And as it turns out, she can't enter Quelaag's domain in the first place. Huh. I didn't expect that one. This is probably possible with a player invader, but I can do one better. Why go to the trouble of freezing Quelaag when we can just skip the fight altogether? First, we need to pick up a few items, because after performing the skip, at least as of right now, we won't be able to return back to Blighttown. We ride the elevator platform to the top, and climb the ladders until reaching the chest with the key to New Londo ruins. Now we can pass through the Valley of Drakes and open the locked door to have easy access into Blighttown without having to perform that insane skip ever again. Next, we light the bonfire in the Aqueduct Cave and proceed up the wooden walkway to the right in the direction where the Wanderer armor set is found. We climb the ladders until reaching the cave that leads into Upper Blighttown and stop here. There's a pile of breakable pottery outside the cave just beneath a torch, and by breaking them, and then inching forward a little at a time as we approach the edge of the wooden platform, it's possible to trigger the same top-down camera we initiated during Sin Skip, and just like in that instance, new areas will fail to load. From here we manually walk back in the direction we came, through the swamp to the north, and through the cave into Quelaag's domain, which fails to load. This allows us to proceed past the unloaded fog gate to Quelaag's boss room and trigger the fight with her, but since she isn't loaded in correctly either, there's no possibility of us taking damage here. It gets really difficult to see where we are with nothing but a gray screen for context, so I like to intentionally avoid curing the poison from the swamp, so we can use the purple clouds of the poison effect to get some visual reference for the direction the character's moving. The room with the lever for the second Bell of Awakening is actually considered part of Quelaag's boss room, so if we quit and reload in that room, we will be ejected all the way back out past the fog gate at the entrance. In order to quit and reload without losing our position, we have to go so far deep into the area that we are nearly in the demon ruins, or at least standing on the stairs that lead to them. When you think you've gotten it, quit and reload to check your position. If you manage to make it past the room with the bell lever, you will spawn in on the opposite side of Quelaag, with the boss still alive, allowing us to view the active boss arena from behind, something that was never intended to be seen by players. It's also worth noting that this fog gate cannot be passed through. It is entirely a wall. Thankfully, we made it to what we came for already. We pull the lever to ring the second bell, which opens not only Sin's Fortress, but also the Pit and Firelink Shrine, where Framp likes to hang out. Before we warp out of this room, we go meet Ingi and the Fair Lady, joining her covenant for Great Chaos Fireball, and take a quick detour into Demon Ruins to intentionally get infected with the Egghead Parasite. 5 minutes and 20 seconds after getting hit by the grab attack of an infected hollow, this will happen. Having the Egghead status unlocks new dialogue with Ingi, and the ability to buy poison pyromancies, which I think most people know, but what you may not know is that if you talk to him with at least 11 intelligence, he will also offer you a pyromancy flame. Our only means of getting one, since we never went to the depths to save Laurentius.
Somebody, please, help me, please, before she eats me.
With that done, we can finally leave this area and warp back to Firelink. At this point, since we have rung both bells, Domhall will officially have moved here and will finally sell us the Master Key. Not like it matters at this point, since we have already opened all the important doors it unlocks anyway. But more importantly, Frampt has arrived and will take us to the Kiln of the First Flame in order to place the Lord Vessel. This is the point at which the game expects us to collect the souls of the four lords to open the gate to the Kiln, but we'll be using a relatively newly discovered glitch to skip all four of them. Before doing that, I think it's time we finalize our build. Just like we used the quantity storage of 999 wooden arrows to buy a full inventory of Twinkling Titanite from the giant blacksmith in Anorlando, we can do the same thing with Framp's feed menu, and this version of the glitch is infinitely more powerful. We'll make sure we're two-handing our weapon, then equip a Homeward Bone in our hotbar, and open the drop menu on the wooden arrows to view the quantity of 999 just like before. Next we follow the same steps of rolling and queuing the Homeward Bone use before the roll ends, pressing start, closing the start menu while moving, and continuing to move until we have the feed menu open. Unlike before, when using this glitch with Frampt, you want to press no on the Homeward Bone pop-up instead of yes. So for duping while buying, you press yes, and for duping while selling, you press no. And while this is a great way to collect souls, it is not the most efficient use of this glitch. If instead, we put all copies of an item we want to sell in the bottomless box so that we hold 0 in our character's inventory, the item will still appear in Framp's feed menu. And if we sell more copies of the item to him than we have from the bottomless box, the number will underflow, and we will get both the soul value of selling 999 copies of the item, but also duplicate 999 copies inside the bottomless box. This can only be done with stackable items, so it's pretty much limited to souls, humanity, arrows, and upgrade materials. But using the glitch, we can instantly turn one dragon scale into 99 and immediately rank up completely in the Dragon Covenant in a matter of minutes. It goes without saying that this is by far the best source of souls in Prepare to Die Edition, easily granting us enough to fully maximize our character with 99 in everything. Except of course Vitality, which is a useless stat when you never get hit. So with our build complete, how do we get to Gwen? As you may already know, there were previous methods of wrong-warping into the kiln already discovered. The first involved dropping to your death and Alt-F4ing or physically cutting the power to your console at a precise time during the loading of a new area, which unfortunately carries the risk of damaging your save data. The second method involved abusing the Purple Coward's Crystal outside of the Battle of Stoicism Gazebo, and was safer but required beating Artorias and Ulasil in order to obtain the crystal in the first place. Today a third method is used, first discovered in 2020, and is without a doubt the easiest of all three. This new version does require a few items, but they're exceptionally easy to obtain, and in fact, we have most of them already. All you need is a Pyromancy Flame, any of the Fireball Pyromancies, the Homeward Miracle, and any secondary spellcasting tool, like a Talisman but not limited to Talismans. The former two are the starting gears for the Pyromancer class, or can be obtained for free from Ingi and the Fair Lady. And the latter two can be purchased from Petrus at any time after reaching Firelink Shrine, meaning, just like that, we're already done shopping. So, with all the necessary tools in hand, here's what you do. First, rest at the Lord Vessel and set our last bonfire to the kiln of the first flame. Next, warp out to any other bonfire. Then, move close to the bonfire but do not rest. Make sure your spell order is Fireball, followed by Homeward, and that Fireball is actively selected. Finally, press L1 and up on the D-pad at the same time in order to cast both Fireball and toggle to Homeward on the same frame. Then on the very next frame, press R1 to cast Homeward. This needs to happen so quickly that it nearly feels like pressing all three buttons at the same time, but remember that the R1 needs to be one frame later than the first two. This will spell swap Homeward, casting it with the animation of Fireball, which allows your character a brief window of movement. During this window, we have just enough time to rest at the bonfire, setting our last bonfire from the kiln to Firelink in the middle of the warp animation, which makes the game lose track of the coordinates of the bonfire in the kiln of the first flame, so that it reverts to the default location of the kiln as a failsafe, which just so happens to be inside. The Homeward Wrong-Warp is not exclusive to Prepare to Die edition, but it is much harder on Dark Souls Remastered, and requires a different setup with more character animations interrupting one another than just these two spells. But on the original release of Dark Souls, this glitch is practically free. Now that we're inside the kiln, we easily make it to Gwen's Fog Gate, and here, just to add insult to injury, I stack all of the damage buffs we have. The Dragon Torso Stone from the Dragon Covenant, the Red Tearstone Ring from the Valley of Drakes, Power Within from Blighttown, and the move-swapped Black Knight Ultra Greatsword, meaning our final showdown with Gwen goes like this. To those of you that made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the playthrough, and that you consider trying out a few of these glitches yourself in the future. I also want to thank IllusoryWall for his contribution to the video. Couldn't have shown out that out-of-bounds geometry in New Londo without him. If you like the music you heard in this video, it's all by the indie hip-hop duo Windmills, longtime supporters of the Souls community on YouTube. And lastly, if you enjoyed what I do and want to see more, consider subscribing or supporting the channel through YouTube membership or Patreon. My supporters pick a monster to represent themselves and get different rewards based on which one they pick, so take a look if you feel like becoming an undead yourself. Links to everything I just mentioned can be found in the description. That's it for Dark Souls 1. Let me know what game you want to see broken next.